Hi. That was a lot harder to do than what I thought it would be. Welcome back to my ramblings as an actor. In this video, I'm going to be going over my thoughts of week 1 of The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. To do that, I have 2 notebooks. I got a big notebook and a little notebook. The big notebook is where I'm doing my morning pages, as well as the writing tasks that are given in the book. And the little notebook I'm using to actually take notes and like jot down thoughts of what I think of the book. There's an ant crawling on my wall. That's also where I did my weekly check-in. She says in the book that you should spend about an hour a day in The Artist's Way. And that was a little unclear, in my opinion, because I tried to like section the book. I was like, okay, I'll read like this many pages this day and that should equal an hour, and then I'll read this many pages that day and that'll equal an hour. And then I got on Reddit. Do people still use Reddit? I read some reviews and people said like it doesn't really work best that way. You should try to read it all at once, and then your journaling should take an hour a day. So I actually started over. I think I went like 2 or 3 days of breaking the chapter apart, and then I realized it didn't really work that way, so I waited a few days and started over. Anyway, being a Catholic author, and I think it was Catholic, I think that's what I read, her approach to creativity has a lot to do with spirituality. And she puts a big preface in the book of like, you know, if you don't want to approach this as you're approaching God and you just want to approach it as the universe, or as she refers to it, the great creator, you can do that, whatever works for you. But as a Christian, I'm going to relate everything back to God. And I just jotted down some notes here. I really loved this quote by Joseph Chilton Pearce. "We must accept that this creative pulse within us is God's creative pulse itself." And that, I think, was on the same page as a quote that I wrote down where she said, "We as creators must forge a creative alliance, artist to artist, with the great creator." And that actually reminded me of something I used to have on my wall back when I had an apartment. And it was a really big poster that I had in my office, and it said, "I am created to create." And I had that partially because I liked it, but also at the church that I used to attend, we used to hold these big conferences about creative church culture. And basically the idea was that a lot of people struggle with the concept of us being created in the image of God. And I think that comes from like taking it too literally. But what we were taught at church is that like we're created in the image of God in a sense of what we feel, and the emotions that we feel that God also feels. Since we are creative beings created by a creative God, that makes us created in his image. We follow in his footsteps of creativity, and Julia Cameron was taking a similar approach. I also wrote down this quote. It says, "Our tears prepare the ground for future growth," which hi Harley, the year that I've had, quite frankly, has been full of a lot of tears. And so it's always encouraging to remember that every struggle has a purpose. And then I jotted down some of these things. It says, "Stop telling yourself it's too late. Stop waiting until you make enough money to do something you really love," which is something I'm guilty of. "Stop telling yourself it's just my ego whenever you yearn for a more creative life." Struggled a lot with my ego. "Stop telling yourself that dreams don't matter or that you should be more sensible." What I heard growing up. "Stop fearing what others think." "Stop telling yourself that creativity is a luxury and that you should be grateful for what you've got." That's something I've heard a lot of too, especially growing up in small towns, there's a lot of small town mentality that has surrounded my creative growth. And I think small town mentality is beautiful. I really do. And people have accused me otherwise. I've been told that I think I'm too good for the small town mentality, or that I'm above it, or, you know, whatever. I've been accused of this before, and that's really not it at all. It really sucks when you care about people and they tell you that you believe that creativity is a luxury and that you should be grateful for what you've got. So there was all of this really great stuff that I was writing down and taking notes on, and I was super excited, loving the book so far. And I turned the page and I saw week 1. I had been reading like a prelude to the book, an intro to the book, taking all these great notes. And so now we've officially entered week 1. Week 1 was called Recovering a Sense of Safety. And in week 1, she primarily focuses on this idea of a shadow artist, and the shadow artist being what becomes of creative people when they're told they can't do it, or they start to believe they can't do it. She says shadow artists are caught between the dream of action and the fear of failure. And that sounds like me to a certain extent. In fact, I have a hoodie that just says Daydreamer on it. And I actually thought about that hoodie when I read that, and I was like, is daydreaming a bad thing? Like, I just sit here and dream, but I never do any action. Sounds like I'm a shadow artist. She says if you've been raised to the role of shadow artist, you have to work consciously to dismantle it. And that's kind of what this book is meant to do, I guess, is teach you how to undo your shadow artist. She said that oftentimes shadow artists will choose to do something creativity adjacent. A funny example she gave was that a lot of times good writers who are told they won't make a living writing will grow up to be a therapist because their stories are being given to them through their patients. She also said that like movie critics oftentimes could be a good director, but they were told they couldn't do it. And so that's something I've always feared. People have always told me I should have a plan B. And to me, a plan B is always just career adjacent. I want to be an actor. And until I feel otherwise, I don't want a plan B. She talks a lot about nurturing your artist and not judging your creative efforts. And that's where in the last video I said something about progress versus perfection. That really stood out to me. I'm really hard on myself. I'm really overly critical. I want to see results now, which actually is what I wrote in my weekly check-in. Is like, I'm like, okay, cool, journaling is fun. I'm kind of enjoying documenting what my life is going through, but I'm not seeing this have an effect on my creativity yet. Of course not. It's week 1, but I want to see those results instantly. And she said, too far, too fast, we can undo ourselves. It's impossible to get better and look good at the same time. I'm also in a journey of trying to physically improve myself right now. I just joined CrossFit. 0 out of 10 recommend. Not 0 out of 10. It's okay. But in case someone hasn't told you, CrossFit is not for people who want to get in shape. It's for people who are already in shape and want to be in superhuman shape. These people are athletes, dude. And I looked like a fool. I wrote on here that creativity is like weight training. It's a slow process. You have to slowly build up to where you want to be. That was really the gist of week 1. Shadow artist, not abusing your creative self, and nurturing that creativity. And yeah, so I did a lot of journaling. There were also some like weekly activities that we were supposed to do. Oh, that's something else I forgot. That was really cool. That was actually my favorite part of week 1. She introduced this idea of affirmations, and essentially the affirmation is a statement that you either believe to be true about yourself or wish to be true about yourself. And contrary to the affirmations, she introduces the idea of blurts, and blurts is what your shadow artist will shout out at you when you try to affirm yourself. And so for me in this exercise, I wrote down my statement that I want to be true about myself. And every time my self-doubt kicked in, I switched to a different color. I wrote down the self-doubt. And then you're supposed to immediately write a comeback, a contrary statement to that self-doubt, saying, no, that's not true because blank. And I really, really enjoyed this. My statement that I wanted to be true about myself for week 1 was, I, Caden, am a talented and imaginative creator worthy of self-appreciation. It doesn't sound like much, maybe, but those are ideas that I really struggle with. So this created a lot of back and forth between me and my shadow artist, my self-doubt. And I was told not to share my morning pages, so I can't read them to you, but it was really interesting to see my self-doubt on a page, to write it down, read it, and say, that's what's holding me back. That's what I'm letting control me. That's what is stopping me from doing the thing. How ridiculous. Or on the contrary, read it and say, yeah, okay, that's fair. That's pretty legitimate. Let's work on that. And so rather than all of these thoughts just getting lost and overwhelming me in my head, I could actually see them on a page and work on them and tackle them. And that was really, really cool. I feel like I should have more to say about it. Maybe I need to go back and read it again. But that was my biggest takeaway from all of this, was the time commitment. It made me realize how much I really don't enjoy bartending right now. I love where I work, and I love craft mixology, which is what I do. But leaving work at 1, 2, 3 in the morning and then forcing myself to get up an hour early to journal every day, tough. It's not great. Like, I get up and I have stuff. My light died. I keep a pretty full plate, so I don't like sleep in much. I get up and I do things, and now I'm just having to get up an hour earlier. But like I said, I'm enjoying the journaling. I don't understand her saying that it should take about an hour a day, because just the journaling, just the morning pages, takes me an hour. Dude, I haven't written anything by hand probably since I was in high school. I'm gonna have to get used to this. My hand is sore. That's part of what's taking me so long, is just like writing 3 full pages of journaling. And that's the goal. That's the goal. She wants you to write 3 full pages. But with the morning pages taking me an hour, I don't know when I'm supposed to do these additional tasks. Was she lying about it taking an hour, or am I supposed to do less morning pages and squeeze my tasks in? I don't know. That's kind of what I started doing toward the end. But yeah, overall, decent start. No real big changes yet, except for the shadow artist thing. The shadow artist thing was really cool. Put me in a really good headspace for the week. And yeah, a lot shorter than the first video, I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to edit this and be like, oh, it's just as long. I hope it's not longer. Thanks for watching. I know it was just rambling nonsense, but if you've never read The Artist Way, or maybe you have, I hope you're enjoying my take on the book, and I'll have another video out next week about week 2.